Okay, plan. One is talk about two more big problems. Then thing two, penguins. Specifically, you've done some stuff. You handled a data set from Antarctica, a real data set. It is time to put groups together to put your data sets together and actually kind of paint a bigger picture of how all these trends are interlocking in Antarctica. So I'll start you on that. That's going to be a process. You're going to be working on that with your group for the next 4 days or so. I think I've decided to make it Monday. You are looking at a test on Friday over 5 and 6 because, and I'm sorry, I know a lot of us teachers are putting tests at the end of this week, and it's just, timing and the fact that last week was remote. There's no way we're going to give you a test then. So it's not going to be a whole lot different than a typical test in this class. So just what you're getting into. Yeah. So grab your notes, please. Quick review that you already wrote that. The underpinning two things I want kind of going through your brain as we talk about these is overpopulation, right, and tragedy of the commons. The idea that when a resource isn't restricted, isn't regulated, and it has value, humans tend to use it up as fast as we can. And so we looked at freshwater depletion and how groundwater is going away, how desertification and deforestation and over farming and all that is contributing to this, and that a lot of this is because of agriculture, because we are feeding so many people. Couple of solutions about irrigation and about recharge via wetlands. Then, sort of a bright spot, I told you the story about the ozone holes and how it's bad because more UV light gets in, but that the banning of CFCs appears to have, we appear to have turned the corner. That's up in the air because 2020 was weird, but I'm gonna go on the side of that was an anomaly. So bad news, kind of good news. Back to the bad news. Bad Wally cat. And these two today are very linked to other problems. Like I'm separating these for you in the way that the book does, but a lot of it is the same stuff. Like desertification is literally like when an area goes from having a decent amount of rainfall and having water held in the soil and having lots of plant life to not, to the water cycle kind of being broken. And the biggest initiators of desertification tend to be unsustainable farming and overgrazing. What that causes is loss of plant life, which then is followed by erosion because the soil isn't held. And so runoff carries the topsoil with it. And we lose the fertile topsoil and we're left with the stuff underneath that does not have enough organic matter to grow plants in. And that results in the soil basically not holding water anymore. And if that's just a small area, if that's even a 100-acre field that happens to, the surrounding area can compensate, right? But if that area gets bigger and bigger, then we start to really mess with the water cycle. Then you're not getting enough water evaporated from the ground, and then you're not getting enough rainfall, and then you end up with what is essentially a desert. So yes, there are areas of the world that are increasingly becoming desertified. Pretty much all the solutions have to do with agriculture. Crop rotation, not just, so the sort of prime example of a sort of, not slash and burn, but when I was in Costa Rica, they gave the example of pineapple farming. Pineapple farming, believe it or not, is like this incredibly destructive process where they'll plant pineapples in the soil. The pineapples will leach all the stuff they need out of the soil, and then they won't be able to grow them anymore there, and they'll just move on to the next plot of land and just leave that plot basically sterile. So crop rotation and making sure you're farming things that replenish the soil in different ways is a good thing. Cover crops for when you're not farming right? So you don't just leave the soil bare with no roots in it holding it together, so erosion doesn't happen. Another thing that goes with crop rotation. If we're talking about animals, cattle, sheep, stuff like that, rotating where they graze is a necessity. And there's no excuse anymore for not doing it because of how cheap electric fences, portable electric fences are. You ever seen one? It's so easy. Like I followed a guy who raised grass-fed cattle for a while, and he has a little portable generator, and then these stakes that he puts up for the fence, and like all you need is this little strip of plastic that gets electrified when you turn the generator on, and your cows are not crossing that. So like you don't need to build big fences necessarily anymore. If it's all your land, you just put them in a certain area, put the electric fence around it. That's where they graze that day. Then you move it the next day. And then the way plants are harvested can be important. The machines that yank a lot of plants out by the roots, or including the roots coming out, can leave the soil vulnerable to erosion. And so chopping them off so the roots are still there is a way to make sure that the soil stays intact while there's no profit. But of course, this flows together, so to speak, with freshwater depletion, right? They're not really separate problems. They're very much kind of the same thing. I'm just kind of separating them for you. Similarly, deforest. Oh, sorry, I forgot about contour farming. That's when you're farming in a hilly area. You want to make sure you plant your rows of crops sort of in a circular way around the hills, which helps the hills hold together and not erode flat like they tend to do. What's that? It's not the siren. It's not Wednesday. You hear it? Air raid. Okay, then this one goes together with freshwater depletion, but also it's a big one for climate change, which we'll talk about tomorrow. Trees are a huge part of the living communities on this planet. Trees are easily our biggest producers by far, right? And producers are what everything depends on, right? They're what produces food for everything else on the planet. So the biggest ones are trees. And roughly, if we look at the percentage of what has been forest on this planet, the original old growth just means trees that have been allowed to get as big as they get. 80% of those are gone, have been cleared. And if we just look at forest cover, what used to be forest, all of it, about half of that, no matter what age, no matter whether it's been logged before or not, about half of just forest is gone from the planet. And so that's big. Because those producers have jobs, right? They suck in CO2 and hold it and turn it into biomass. And they're not doing that as much anymore. So there's more CO2 in the air. They provide a way for soil to hold on to water. They hold water themselves. They help evaporate water into the air. They hold soil together so that it doesn't erode. And they are a place for animals, insects, birds, squirrels, all kinds of different animals. Shoot, I mean, moss, lichen, fungus, all kinds of stuff grows in trees, lives in trees. So of course that's habitat loss for them. So that's a big deal too, and connects to several other problems we have and we'll talk about. Solutions, boy, besides like plant more trees and don't cut so many down. I guess the methods you use to cut trees down, the typical method in the last century has been clear cutting, which means just either with chainsaws or bulldozers, just take the whole forest, just push it all down. It's quick, it's cheap, you make lots of money, right? Well, selective logging leaves an actual forest still there, right? Take every 10th tree, take every 5th tree. There's even ways to log a forest that make it healthier. You take the leaners and the ones that are crowding other trees, you can thin a forest out and make it, even more healthy and diverse, but that's typically not the cheapest way to go. Yeah.
Is the thing on 4B increased and decreased?
Yep. Increased CO2, decreased watersheds. So selective logging is an option. Tree farms, not so much for building materials. We tend to like bigger trees than tree farms can make in a reasonable amount of time, but building's not all we use trees for. What do you think one of the main uses of trees on this planet is these days? Yeah, for paper. And tree farms are pretty good at producing pulp, pulp type trees for paper that grow fast and can be used in paper mills. And so that's cool. And couple that with the fact that we've been working on trees that grow faster, genetically engineered, fast growing trees. So the paper end of it has definitely gotten better. I should probably change that to GMO. That's what most people understand now. So there, that's your gloom and doom for the day. You have some groups. I think I wrote your groups down in Classroom. Go ahead and log in. Yeah, good. Okay, so when this drops in, you will see who is in your group, at least by last name. Each person in your group has a different job. In other words, I've put groups together of 5 or 6 people, making sure that every single job that was given last week, ornithologist, oceanographer, marine ecologist, meteorologist, and fisheries biologist, there's at least one of each specialty in your group. Your job, once you get together and once the person you choose has shared their copy of the final report and flowchart with the other members, because that's what you're going to do, your job is going to be to complete together the final report, which looks like this. It's just got some questions about how you put your data together and what the trends are. And then most importantly, and this is the thing you'll get the most points for, you're going to be making me a flowchart. Take a look. And you should recognize in these 6 cards, look up for a second. You'll have time. In these 6 cards, you should be able to pick out your data set. These are data trend cards, right? The big red arrow means decrease or increase. So I gave you air temperature, right? Increased in air temperature. Somebody had increased snowfall, somebody had decreased ice extent. These are each one of your group members. Each one of them is going to basically say, yeah, that card's me. I graphed that. I know what that looks like. This is what the graph looks like. Here's what I know. And you're going to start putting your information together and rearranging these cards and feel free to go to like the next slide or the next, bump it down a page and start moving those things around. It might be easier. I'm going to go ahead and give you a paper copy. Each group is going to get a paper copy of this if you want to cut them out physically, move them around and put the arrows between them before you do it digitally. Because all of you rummaging around in a digital file at once is not pretty. I've seen it cause like slap fights. So what you'll wind up with eventually is each of these cards connected to other cards by cause arrows. In other words, if you determine based on pooling your data that decreased sea ice extent increases snowfall, there will be an arrow going between this one and this one that says causes. And put enough arrows in there. There's also in this, when this is done correctly, there is one weird double effect, and so there's one double-headed arrow there. But that's all that you'll need. You'll just need to move those objects around in the document once you've figured it out. And that's kind of going to be your final product. Any questions? I mean, there's going to be questions. Yeah. I was thinking Friday, now I'm thinking Monday, since you have a test Friday. So yeah, I think Monday. You're going to get the rest of this period to work. Then I can probably promise you some more class time in this week at some point, but not a ton. Some of this work is probably going to have to be done sort of, remotely or communicating through notes in the doc or whatever. But so, okay, in the assignment, you now know, you know who your group members are. One of those group members, and this goes for you remote people too, one of your group members is going to share that document with all the others. You'll need to, learn each other, spell each other's names and stuff. Feel free to move so that you're a little bit closer to the people in your group and start talking. Start talking about what your data is, why you think the stuff happened that happened, and see where the interlocking stuff is. Good? I don't know, have fun.